Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game Esoteric and a continuing series Dreamcast Dreamland, where I take a look at some of my favorite Dreamcast games of all time. And since we extended the series out into a one I feel like it sort of situation, we're going to be talking about Giant Graham 2000 All Japan Pro Wrestling 3 today. And outside of this absolutely spectacular intro with some of the smoothest jazz you're ever going to find, this game is just absolutely awesome, and I feel like not many people have played it. Before we get too far involved though, do me a huge favor, go down below, hit like, subscribe, and that notification bell definitely helps us out, or I will clothesline you. And if you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, we have a Patreon link down below in the description as well. Now I will say right off the bat, I do not know who 90% of the wrestlers are in this game. I know Vader right there, but otherwise, these are all Japanese wrestlers or some classic American wrestlers I'm not too familiar with. And I have not watched wrestling since I've been like 13 or 14 years old. I loved it back then, like every kid seems to, but I kind of outgrew it and don't really go back into watching it whatsoever. But I will say I absolutely love a good wrestling game, and mechanically the Giant Graham series on Dreamcast is the best, in my opinion, wrestling game on the platform. This is one of the best wrestling games of all time as far as I am concerned, because all of the mechanics, all of the gameplay, all of the reversals, the different moves you can execute, when you're playing this game and a match is going well, everything's clicking, this has flow to it that so many games try to achieve and just can't possibly manage. I will say off the top though, I am emulating this. It's supposed to be VGA cable compatible, but I could not get this game to run on my Dreamcast with a VGA box. I do not know why, it just wasn't working. Maybe your mileage may vary, but you can see that emulation of Dreamcast is quite good because this is running at full speed with absolutely zero issues. The shadows look a little bit strange compared to the original console, but otherwise it is no big deal whatsoever. But again, presentation-wise, this game is basic. The models all have really nice polygons for them as far as what Dreamcast could handle. And of course, you've got those cardboard cutouts in the audience kind of masquerading as people. But the announcer, the camera work, how everything just goes together, it's a really good package for a wrestling game. But honestly, if you're playing a wrestling game, you're here for the wrestling itself, the combat, the flow to it, and all the moves you can execute. And that is just absolutely amazing. And you'll see there as I kicked him in the back of the neck and injured him. It's just so much fun. This is just like a good 2D or 3D fighting game. When you're playing well, when you're up against an opponent who's challenging you, it's a really intense experience, and that's why I love playing wrestling games. And I don't play modern ones just because I have no idea who's in them. And of course, I'm just playing this because I love the Dreamcast, and I imported this game back in the day when I owned a Dreamcast because it was on an import list for like 25 bucks. I wanted to play something new, and I said, you know what, why not get a Japanese wrestling game? How bad could it be? And what I found was it's absolutely incredible. You'll see here we get some ring intro animations. They're not the most exciting thing in the world, but they're good enough. You're not playing this game for the presentation. You're not going to be blown away by all the mechanics. There's not a ton of different types of matches. You're just going to be wrestling in a tournament, or you're going to be wrestling against your friends. But that's why it's so much fun. And you can see there with that screen loading transition, there really isn't a ton of presentation in between the matches themselves. So it might not be visually the best Dreamcast game you've ever seen, but mechanically, if you're into these type of games and you've never played the Giant Graham series, you're going to 100% love everything they're doing. Now, if you're not into wrestling games, maybe give Giant Graham 2000 a try, because you may actually find out that you do like the genre. And this is the third game in the Giant Graham series, and it's the one that I recommend you start with because it is the best. And when this game came out, pretty much everyone reviewed it as an 8.5 to 9 out of 10. Even back when it was released, this scored really highly, and I think that that is because everyone just really loved it, because it is an arcade-based game. It's fast-paced, and when you really make a strike on an opponent, when you body slam them, when you DDT them, there's a lot of impact. Like right there, the screen shakes. It looks like it's tough and impactful, and it hurts. There's not a lot of soundtrack to speak of, but the sound effects and the announcer are great, so go ahead and listen for like 45 seconds, and I'll come back and try to convince you to start playing wrestling games if you haven't. But enjoy.
高速で決めていかん。固めていった。まだまだといった感じです。強烈。
I appreciate what the developers at WoW Entertainment did when they made the soundscape for this game, because you wouldn't expect a lot of music in the background because it is a live event, but the crowd noises, the strike impacts, the announcer, it all just goes towards building a feeling like you're actually there watching the match. Now of course you're not, and this is Dreamcast, not real life, but it's a really nice way of making you feel a little bit more involved, and I like when some of those slaps hit as well. You see some sweat just spray off your opponent. It's a really nice look. I will say that you can time out the game as well, because pinning your opponent sometimes can be difficult. If you're too close to the ropes, you're not allowed to do it. But you can build a wrestler as well, and you can have all sorts of different attributes. Now granted, a lot of this, well, all of it actually, is going to be in Japanese, so you may need to use a translation app on your phone if you want to make your own character, or you may need to look up an FAQ. If I find one before I post this, I'll leave it below. But another interesting thing is this has a set of historical matches, apparently giant loved matches in Japanese wrestling, and you have to basically recreate the match move for move like it happened in real life. Now this is where the game is fun but more difficult, because if you don't speak or read Japanese, you're not going to know what it's asking of you. There's still fun matches, you get some tag team battles, you get some one-on-one stuff, but this is where the game gets a little more difficult. You wouldn't expect a wrestling game in Japanese to have a large language barrier, but about half of this game does, because this is half the package, these historical matches, and you need to be able to read that kanji and pull off the move. You'll see there was a miss. The game was expecting a certain wrestling move out of me that I was not able to do because I don't know what it's telling me as far as the move I'm supposed to pull off is concerned. But this is just a ton of fun, and it really gets lively when you have actual human friends, if you have them. If you don't, I'm sorry. And then you come over, you crack open a few beers, and you play this game. It's a ton of fun. Maybe you play some Power Stone beforehand, maybe you play some Crazy Taxi afterwards, but you pop on Giant Graham 2000, you play against a friend, and you just basically wrestle back and forth, and it feels awesome. It's like the longer version of a fighting game. And like I said, maybe you're huge into wrestling or huge into the genre. If you are, leave me a link down below to some of the good modern wrestling games to play, because I haven't played a wrestling game in so many years, and I kind of actually want to buy something modern and maybe just check it out, even if I don't know who the characters are. I kind of miss this genre, because when I was a kid and I was into wrestling, I had like every wrestling game on the PlayStation 1, every wrestling game on Dreamcast, Nintendo 64. If there was a wrestling game, I was going to buy it, and I still have a ton in my collection. But at least now we have someone I do recognize, which is Vader, although he's walking into this ring very strange. It's kind of like maybe Vader has a dump in his pants. Maybe he didn't have time to go to the bathroom before the match. But at least I do recognize who this person is, which is a lot better than I do with the Japanese wrestlers. But yeah, Giant Graham 2000 is a ton of fun, and this was previewed pretty heavily in magazines back when the Dreamcast was coming, because the original game was, I believe, one of the launch titles, or right around the intro to the Dreamcast in Japan. So if you were reading gaming magazines back in the day, you were probably seeing a lot of screenshots for this, and I 100% understand why they wouldn't bring this to North America, because no one would have any idea who they were wrestling as. But like I said, this was a big import game back in the day because it was quite cheap, and it is still quite cheap. So if you're looking for something new and different and region locked on the Dreamcast to check out, I can't recommend Giant Graham 2000 All Japan Pro Wrestling 3 enough. But like I said earlier, get the third game in the series. It's the most fully featured, it's the best out of all of them, and you can honestly pick it up on a good day for like 20 bucks. It's a great addition to your Dreamcast library. Like I mentioned earlier, do me a huge favor, go down below, hit like, subscribe, and that notification bell, or else I will slap you like I'm slapping Vader right here. And I will be back with that episode in Dreamcast Dreamland when I feel like it, and I'll have videos throughout the week as well. But yeah, if you've ever played this game before, tell me what you think in the comments, and if you've never played it, after the video, maybe find a way to play it. I've beaten Vader, we'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.